You're not here by chance. Something quiet but powerful inside you brought you to this exact moment. And by the time we're done, you'll realize this isn't just another video. It's a reflection, a signal. Maybe you've started noticing that the things that once triggered you don't grip you the same way, that you're reacting less, observing more. That's not random. That's the shadow loosening its hold. The Stoics taught us that real strength is silent. It's not in control, it's in clarity. It's not in noise, it's in knowing. If something in you has been craving peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, you're already on the path. You're no longer living at the mercy of your past. The shadow, the part of you shaped by fear, shame, and survival, once pulled every string. It told you how to speak, how to dress, how to exist. Not from truth, but from protection. Protection against judgment, abandonment, rejection. You weren't living, you were defending. But slowly, without ceremony or announcement, that grip has loosened. You catch yourself mid-pattern and do something rare. You stop, you breathe, you wait. That space between impulse and action is where your freedom is being born. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And that's exactly what was happening. For years, the unconscious drove the car, wearing your face, using your voice, calling itself you. But it wasn't you. It was a version of you sculpted by trauma, by conditioning, by repetition. The real you. That one was buried under layers of noise. And now, finally, you're peeling those layers back. You're not broadcasting your pain anymore. There was a time when your story was your shield, your stage, and your cage. You told it because it was the only way you knew how to connect. You hoped someone would hear it and say, "You matter." But something inside has shifted. The pain is still part of you, but it's no longer your currency. You don't need to bleed to be seen. You don't need to ache out loud to feel valid. There's a calm now where the craving used to be. This is what healing really looks like. Not some flashy declaration of having moved on, but a quiet reordering of your inner world. Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." You've examined, not casually, not once, relentlessly. You've turned inward again and again, and it has changed you. You no longer tell your story from the wound, you tell it from the scar. And that scar, it's not shameful, it's sacred. It says, "I lived through it, and I lived." Now, you're more deliberate. Not because you're trying to control everything, but because you finally know what it feels like to move from alignment instead of anxiety. You don't race to fill silence. You don't rush to be understood. You understand yourself, and that's enough. You've stopped performing. You've started being. There's a difference, and you can feel it. When the shadow was in charge, discomfort meant danger. Stillness felt like suffocation. Now it feels like safety, like space. You've started to trust what emerges in the quiet. Insight, peace, truth, they rise to meet you when you're not drowning them in distraction. Aristotle once taught that knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom, and that's what's unfolding here. A knowing, not intellectual, but intuitive. The kind of knowing that doesn't need to be proven to be real. You aren't driven by survival anymore. You're guided by clarity. When someone misunderstands you, you don't spiral, you soften. When an old trigger appears, you observe it without collapsing into it. You're not numb, you're free. And freedom doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you're no longer imprisoned by what you feel. You walk differently now. Your energy arrives before you do, and it says something even when you don't speak. Not because you're louder, but because you're clearer. You're not asking the world to complete you. You're not waiting for someone to save you from yourself. That part of the journey is over. Plato believed that the soul is drawn toward the light of truth, but clouded by the distractions of the material world. And isn't that exactly what healing clears away? The noise, the illusions, the roles you were assigned but never agreed to. You're not playing those roles anymore. You're rewriting the script, one choice at a time. And it's not that you've become perfect, it's that you've become present. Presence is the true sign the shadow is losing its grip. Because when you're present, you're not fighting the past or fearing the future. You're here now, responding rather than reacting, choosing rather than escaping. You no longer need life to be easy to be at peace. You've built peace into your being, and that peace isn't fragile. It doesn't shatter when someone disapproves. It doesn't vanish when a memory resurfaces. It holds, because it was built on truth, not performance. You're not who you were, not because you've added more to yourself, but because you've removed what was never really you to begin with. And in that space, something honest has taken root, something deep, quiet, and real. There's a calm in you now that used to be missing, a peace that doesn't need to declare itself. It just exists, steady, rooted, unaffected by the need for recognition. You no longer feel the urge to announce your growth or prove your healing. You live it, quietly, elegantly, fully. There's no performance in your presence anymore, and somehow that subtle shift has changed everything. Because one of the most honest signs that your shadow is no longer steering the ship is how little the past grips you now. Those words that used to pierce you, they pass through, barely touching the surface. The people who once activated your deepest wounds, they feel distant, like characters in a dream you've finally woken up from. You're not pushing them away, you're simply no longer standing in the same emotional room. You used to believe that strength meant being unbothered, that maturity was silence, stillness, an unshakable face. But you've come to realize it's not about suppressing your reactions, it's about being unhooked by them. There's still feeling, you still care, you're still moved by the world, but those emotions no longer drag you by the throat. They inform you, they don't control you. That's the transformation. That's integration, and it's subtle. The outside world may not notice it, but you feel it. A lightness in your body when you walk away from conflict without guilt. A quiet relief when you let someone think what they want without correcting them. Emotional alchemy, as Carl Jung would describe it, isn't about the removal of pain. It's about the conversion of pain into wisdom. It's a shift in the energy, not the evidence. You don't exile your anger anymore. You invite it in, sit it down, and ask what it's trying to tell you. And sadness? You no longer fear it like a shadow on your doorstep. You let it rest beside you. You listen. Sometimes it speaks of unmet needs, sometimes of letting go. Either way, you welcome its message without rushing it out the door. There's clarity now in your emotional life. Not control, not perfection, clarity. You don't need every feeling to resolve immediately. You don't rush to fix discomfort. You let it unfold. You let it teach. As Aristotle once noted, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom, and the more you've allowed yourself to feel honestly, without flinching or editing, the more you've discovered who you really are beneath the noise. People notice, even if they can't name it. There's something different in your energy. It's less reactive, more grounded, not passive, present. And that presence, that settled energy, begins to act like a filter. Things that used to pull you in, arguments, drama, the need to explain, no longer stick. They pass through, not because you're numb, but because you've become clear about what deserves your energy. Plato once described the soul as drawn toward truth and light, but distracted by illusion. You've stopped chasing illusions, of being liked by everyone, of always being right, of never being misunderstood. You've realized that clarity doesn't need company. You can be seen or unseen, praised or ignored, and still remain whole. This wholeness, this emotional self-sufficiency, is not something you found in a book or a course. It came from experience, from heartbreak, from the slow work of sitting with yourself on nights you wanted to run. It was shaped in silence, honed through stillness, and matured by choosing presence over reaction, again and again. You don't need to win anymore. Not the argument, not the approval, not even the closure. Socrates once said that the greatest way to live with honor in this world is to be what we pretend to be. And that's what you're doing now, living from the truth of who you are, not the performance of who you think you're supposed to be. And perhaps that's the most remarkable shift of all. You're not just managing emotions, you're leading them, not with force, but with awareness. You're the space they enter. You're the observer, the listener, the one who decides what to do next. There's power in that. But it's not the kind of that shift. It changed everything. And when you truly know yourself, the performance ends. You stop adjusting your tone, your words, your posture, just to match a room that wasn't built for you in the first place. You stop smiling just to make others comfortable when inside you feel everything but. You stop saying yes when your intuition is screaming no. It's not defiance, it's self-respect. It's not rebellion, it's reclamation. You've begun to reclaim parts of yourself that were trained to stay silent, the pieces that were conditioned to perform, to appease, to fit. You've let go of the need to be liked in exchange for the freedom to be whole. And you didn't do it in one grand moment. You did it gradually, one honest decision at a time. Each time you chose truth over habit, you peeled off another mask. And what you found beneath those masks wasn't shameful. It wasn't something to fix. It was breathtaking, raw, real, and beautifully human. That's what lives under the armor. Not weakness, but authenticity. Not imperfection, but integrity. That's the deeper sign of change. You no longer confuse your shadow with your essence. You used to believe that your pain was your identity, that if you took away the wounds, there'd be nothing left. But now you know, they weren't your truth. They were your signal. They called you inward. They broke the illusion that you had to earn love by suffering for it. They revealed what was real. Plato once said, "The first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself." But that victory isn't found in self-denial. It's found in self-acceptance. The shadow, the parts of you that once acted out in fear, in defense, in survival, was never evil. It was protective. It was trying to help, but it was helping from a place of old pain. Now, instead of rejecting those parts, you've started to see them with compassion. You're not fighting your inner child. You're parenting them. You're saying, "I see you. I know you were just trying to keep us safe." And instead of suppressing those feelings, you invite them in. You listen. And something remarkable happens when you do that. The chaos begins to quiet. The compulsions lose their grip, because the parts of you that were screaming for attention finally feel heard. What was once automatic, reactivity, overthinking, people-pleasing, is now conscious. There's a pause where panic used to be, a moment of breath where there used to be an explosion. You catch yourself, you reflect, and sometimes you still fall back into old patterns. That's okay, that's human, but the difference now, you notice, and noticing is the beginning of liberation. Aristotle believed that knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. That wisdom isn't loud, it doesn't demand applause. It shows up in how you speak to yourself when you make a mistake, in how you sit with discomfort instead of fleeing from it, in how you return over and over to the version of you that isn't driven by fear, but led by clarity. You catch yourself in the moment now, that sharp edge in your voice, that reflex to interrupt, that low whisper suggesting you're still not enough. You don't suppress it. You don't shame it. You witness it, and in that witnessing, something powerful unfolds. You pause, you breathe, you create space between the feeling and the action. That space? That's your power. That's where the old script ends and a new response begins. You've stopped collapsing into your reactions. You've stopped letting emotions write the whole story. Now you edit, you shape, you choose. And that's not just awareness, it's sovereignty. You are no longer a passenger to your programming. You are at the wheel, calm, observant, steady. You don't hate the patterns that once ran your life. You thank them, because they were built for survival, not sabotage. They protected you when you didn't have better tools. They kept you afloat when the waves were too strong to swim through. But now, those waters have changed. You've learned to navigate differently, and so you let those old patterns rest. No resentment, just release. Aristotle once said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. The habits of self-awareness, compassion, and presence have started to take root in you. You're becoming someone who responds rather than reacts, who pauses rather than panics. And that quiet shift, it sends ripples. Your energy shifts, subtly at first. You feel lighter, clearer, more grounded. You no longer walk into rooms seeking to prove your worth. You carry it in with you. People feel the difference, even if they can't name it. Some feel uncomfortable around it, because they still operate from the frequency you've outgrown. Others feel drawn in, not by what you say, but by how you are. You stop chasing, you stop clinging, because your peace no longer hinges on someone else staying. You no longer interpret someone's distance as a verdict on your value. You understand that people come and go, but your alignment stays, and that alignment becomes your anchor. It holds steady even when connections shift, when relationships dissolve, when silence replaces the conversations you once relied on for comfort. You're not building from lack anymore. You're building from wholeness. That changes how you connect. You stop confusing constant attention with real intimacy. You stop mistaking emotional turbulence for love. You don't seek out relationships that feel like a roller coaster just to confirm you're still alive. You've stopped romanticizing dysfunction, the ache of codependency that once disguised itself as devotion. You've outgrown it. Plato believed that the measure of a man is what he does with power. Emotional maturity is power, and you're using it not to dominate, but to discern. You know now that true love doesn't come with chains. It doesn't demand performance. It doesn't fill a void. It reflects your fullness. The love you offer now doesn't plead to be returned. It exists, complete in itself. A love that asks for nothing but presence. A love that no longer stems from fear, but flows from freedom. There's a softness to you now, but it's not weakness. It's strength refined. It's the strength of someone who no longer needs to be the loudest voice in the room. Someone who doesn't prove worthiness by sacrificing their peace. That softness, that inner quiet, carries more weight than any declaration ever could. You're no longer living for emotional highs and lows. You're living for clarity, for resonance, for peace. And the relationships that survive this version of you, they're different. They're quieter, safer, more honest. They don't feed on need. They grow from mutual truth. You've stopped negotiating your worth. That old pattern, constantly adjusting, over-explaining, asking silently for permission to exist, that's behind you now. You don't bend to fit into spaces that feel too tight for your truth. You don't shrink to protect someone else's comfort. You've learned that when you contort yourself to keep others at ease, what you're sacrificing is not just your authenticity, it's your peace. And peace that demands silence, that's not peace, that's performance. A subtle performance maybe, one that smiles, nods, and stays quiet when your soul is screaming. But still, performance. And you've reached a point where pretending costs more than it's worth. The truth is, real peace can hold space for truth. It can stretch wide enough to contain discomfort, clarity, and even disagreement. It doesn't silence, it strengthens. That's why your boundaries have shifted. They don't carry the sharp edge of resentment anymore. They aren't born from defensiveness. They rise naturally, like breath, clear, calm, and firm. You don't have to raise your voice. You don't need to convince or coerce. You simply state what's true for you and allow others to meet you where they can. Socrates once said, "To know thyself is the beginning of wisdom." And in that knowing, you've stopped needing to be everything for everyone. The people meant for you, they understand, not because you over-explained, but because they've walked their own path. They recognize the resonance. It's not something you say, it's something you are. Your frequency speaks before your words do. That's the shift. You're not trying to be seen anymore. You're simply showing up as yourself. The rest filters naturally. You begin attracting differently. Not more, not louder, but cleaner. The energies you meet now feel more aligned. Conversations go deeper with less effort. Interactions carry less friction. That's not coincidence, it's coherence. The way you show up has changed, and so has what you draw in. Where once you called people in from your wounds, hoping they'd complete something inside you, you now call from your center, whole, grounded, undemanding. Carl Jung once observed, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." That includes the parts of you that chased approval through endless explanations. But now you don't resist misunderstanding. You don't fight to be seen exactly as you are. You've accepted that some people will get it and some won't. You've stopped chasing clarity in other people's minds. You know your truth. You trust it. And that's enough. So the habit of constant justification falls away. You no longer feel the need to draft mental essays for every opinion. You don't rehearse conversations in your head trying to make someone understand. You release the compulsion to be legible to everyone. And in that release there's relief. Because misunderstanding, it's not an attack. It's a filter. It reveals who is in tune with your frequency and who still needs the static of noise to feel secure. And that's okay. You let it filter, not with judgment, but with ease. You walk lighter because you're no longer carrying the burden of being universally understood. You know that your clarity doesn't need consensus. It just needs presence. And now you bring that presence with you into every room, every relationship, every silence. Even the way you speak to yourself has changed. There's less harshness now, less internal noise that shames you into silence or second-guesses your every move. You don't berate, you don't belittle. Instead, you guide, you pause, you check in. Your inner voice no longer sounds like a drill sergeant. It sounds like someone who actually cares about your well-being. You've become the kind of presence you used to look for in others. That's not small, that's transformation. And it's not just that you're nicer to yourself, it's deeper than that. There's a softness in how you navigate your inner world, but also a clarity. You're not making excuses, you're making space. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." You're doing that now. Not because everything is perfect, but because you've stopped demanding perfection in order to feel worthy. When your shadow narrated your life, your inner dialogue was a battlefield. Everything was urgency, pressure, performance. But now your soul has the mic, and your soul doesn't yell, it doesn't criticize, it doesn't compete. It whispers, it waits. It reminds you of what really matters when everything else gets loud. It calls you back, not with guilt, but with grace. It doesn't punish your detours. It simply guides you home. You've stepped off the hamster wheel of urgency. That exhausting cycle of running faster, doing more, trying harder, just to feel like you're enough. You've stopped chasing validation like it's oxygen. You've stopped setting fire to your own peace just to keep someone else warm. You've stopped measuring your worth by the noise around you, because now you know. There's no award, no applause, no follower count that can quiet the ache of being disconnected from yourself. So you've shifted, from chasing to choosing, from proving to embodying, from noise to knowing, from surviving to seeing. That shift didn't come with fanfare. No one handed you a trophy, but you feel it in your bones, in the way you wake up, in the way you breathe, in the way your mind doesn't spiral like it used to when things don't go your way. You've realized that calm isn't something you find, it's something you become. Not all at once, but slowly, choice by choice. And those choices are no longer fueled by fear. They come from a different place now, a deeper one that trusts what it feels even when it can't explain it, one that doesn't need to be loud to be sure. Aristotle believed that happiness is the expression of the soul in considered actions. That's where you are now. You're not just reacting, you're responding, thoughtfully, honestly, fully. And that kind of presence, that's not built overnight. It's built in the quiet, in the moments when no one's watching, in the pauses between all the doing. You walk through the world now with a softness that doesn't beg to be understood. It's not weakness, it's power, distilled, a quiet kind of strength that doesn't need to raise its voice. That kind of power doesn't push, it doesn't chase, it holds, it observes, it responds with intention, not reaction, and that refinement, it isn't polished to impress, it's shaped by truth. You no longer try to convince the world you've grown. You simply live in a way that proves it, wordlessly. Even your solitude has changed shape. What once felt like isolation now feels like a sanctuary. The silence that used to echo has become a kind of music. You don't fill the quiet with distraction. You sit in it, breathe in it, expand inside it. You stay with yourself, not out of resignation, but reverence. Because being alone no longer means being abandoned. It means being aligned. You're not withdrawing out of fear. You're arriving from fullness. You no longer reach for others to complete you. You've stopped outsourcing your sense of wholeness. And in that, you've uncovered one of life's rarest forms of freedom. As Carl Jung once noted, loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important. Now, you're finally able to communicate those things, first to yourself. That's where it all begins. This isn't disconnection. This is maturity. The space between what happens to you and how you respond, that's where your freedom now resides. You've found stillness in that space, clarity in the pause. When confusion arises, you don't collapse. You ground. When your truth is challenged, it doesn't shake. It stands. And when love shows up, you don't mold yourself to keep it. You meet it from your center, with open hands, not clenched fists. The difference is subtle, but profound. You're not detached. You're deeply rooted. You're not cold. You're clear. You're not aloof. You're awake. That intentionality pulses through everything you do now. How you speak, how you hold eye contact, how you choose silence over explanation, presence over performance. And that shift, though invisible to most, has altered your entire reality. Because when your energy is no longer distorted by old narratives, when you're no longer haunted by outdated roles or unmet expectations, the world responds differently. The people who show up match your alignment. The experiences that find you mirror your depth. You're no longer magnetizing chaos. You're inviting coherence, not because you've become someone new, but because you've finally made room for who you've always been, beneath the proving, the pleasing, the pretending. And now, you show up whole, Not because nothing's broken, but because you've stopped seeing yourself through the cracks. You carry your past, but it no longer carries you. You're not walking with the weight of who you were. You're walking with the wisdom of who you've become. And that is the greatest sign of all. Not a milestone you marked with a loud declaration. Not a moment you posted about to prove your progress. Just a quiet recognition. A knowing that moved in, unannounced, and made itself at home in your body, your breath, your presence. You've remembered yourself, not the version of you shaped by survival, not the one that adapted to be acceptable, but the self that existed long before fear started drawing boundaries around your worth. You didn't conquer the shadow. That was never the goal. You integrated it. You listened to what it had to say, and instead of silencing it, you welcomed it into the circle. You stopped treating your darker parts like intruders and started treating them like messengers. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And that's what you've done. You made space for the discomfort. You sat with the parts of yourself others taught you to hide. You faced what was once too painful to name. And because of that, you're no longer ruled by what once controlled you. The shadow still walks with you, but it no longer holds the reins. It no longer hijacks your decisions or derails your peace. It whispers sometimes, but you're not afraid of its voice anymore. You know how to listen without losing yourself. You've grown out of the need to banish the darkness because now you see what it's made of. Protection, not poison. Confusion, not corruption. You didn't fix it. You didn't need to. You loved it into alignment. And now? You've stepped into a power so quiet, most people will never see it coming. It's not performative. It doesn't need to dominate the room. It doesn't depend on approval. It doesn't sparkle. It grounds. It's the kind of power that holds eye contact without flinching, that sits in stillness without shrinking, that speaks the truth, even when it's inconvenient. Plato called this kind of inner authority the harmony of the soul. A self that governs itself not through suppression, but through understanding. So if you feel this, not just in your mind, but in your body, in your breath, in your bones, know that you're not alone. If you've started softening, letting go, forgiving yourself, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not losing your edge. You're remembering your essence. You're not broken for healing. You're not weak for releasing the things that once defined you. Growth is rarely glamorous, but it's always sacred. You're just remembering, and in that remembering, in that return to your own center, you become something powerful for others too. You become permission, a quiet lighthouse for those still trying to find their way through their own storm. You don't need to preach. You don't need to push. You just need to be. Because the more you live in alignment, the more others can feel the possibility of doing the same. That's what this is. Not a performance, a return, a reunion with the self you buried beneath all the noise, all the striving, all the fear. And as you reclaim that self, you show others, without ever needing to say it, that it's safe to do the same. It's safe to let go, to soften, to live honestly, to belong fully to yourself. And maybe the biggest change of all is this. You're not trying to become someone new anymore, because you've finally come back to who you really are. If something in this message spoke to you, there's more waiting. Just click one of the videos on the screen whenever you're ready. Each one is here to support your journey. Thanks for being part of Stoic Journal. It means a lot that you're here. Until next time, keep moving with purpose, keep listening to yourself. And when life feels noisy, return to your own quiet. That's where your strength is.